Okay, Hare Krishna. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, thank you for joining. This is our daily reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, continuing with the 23rd chapter in Canto 3, text 49. Patim sa pravrajishyantam tada lakshyo shati bahihi smayamana viklavena hridayena viduyata. Patim sa pravrajishyantam tada lakshyoshati bahihi smayamana viklavena hridayena viduyata. Patim, her husband, sa, she, pravrajishyantam, going to leave home. Tada, then, alakshya, after seeing, ushati, beautiful, bahihi, outwardly, smayamana, smiling, viklavena, agitated, hridayena, with a heart, viduyata, being distressed. When she saw her husband about to leave home, she smiled externally, but at heart she was agitated and distressed. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kardama Muni finished his household affairs quickly by his mystic power. The building of the castle in the air, traveling all over the universe with his wife in the company of beautiful girls, and begetting of children were finished. And now, according to his promise to leave home for his real concern of spiritual realization, after impregnating his wife, he was about to go away. Seeing her husband about to leave, Devahuti was very disturbed, but to satisfy her husband, she was smiling. The example of Kardama Muni should be understood very clearly. A person whose main concern is Krishna consciousness, even if he is entrapped in household life, should always be ready to leave household enticement as soon as possible. Text 50. लिखन्त्यधो मुखी भूमिं पदानख मणिश्रिया उवाच ललितां वाचं निरुध्याश्रुकलां शनैः लिखन्त्यधो मुखी भूमिं पदानख मणिश्रिया उवाच ललितां वाचं निरुध्याश्रुकलां शनैः लिखन्ति, scratching, Adha Mukhi, her head bent down, Bhumim, the ground, Pada, with her foot, Nakha, nails, Mani, gem like, Shriya, with radiant, Uvacha, she spoke, Lalitam, charming, Vacham, accents, Nirudhya, suppressing, Ashru Kalam, tears, Shanaihi, slowly. Translation and purport. She stood and scratched the ground with her foot, which was radiant with the luster of her gem-like nails. Her head bent down. She spoke in slow yet charming accents, suppressing her tears. Devahuti was so beautiful that her toenails appeared just like pearls, and as she scratched the ground, it appeared as if pearls had been thrown on the ground. When a woman scratches the ground with her foot, it is a sign that her mind is very disturbed. These signs were sometimes exhibited by the gopis before Krishna. When the gopis came in the dead of the night and Krishna asked them to return to their homes, the gopis also scratched the ground like this because their minds were very disturbed. So I'll read the translations of these two verses one more time. When she saw her husband about to leave home, she smiled externally, but at heart she was agitated and distressed. She stood and scratched the ground with her foot, which was radiant with the luster of her gem-like nails. Her head bent down, and she spoke in slow yet charming accents, suppressing her tears. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class by ISKCON of Naperville. And today's verses are Canto 3, Chapter 23, Text 49 and 50. So the context is Kardama Muni and Devahuti were leading this life of asceticism and devotion to the Supreme Lord. And after leading thousands of years, of such a lifestyle, Kardama Muni looks at Devahuti and her emaciated body. And then we hear this many verses describing how he built an aerial mansion, and then how there were these Gandharva girls who who beautified her body, and then how many years they enjoyed together of conjugal union, and then they come back to their hermitage, and now she's had her 9 daughters who, so after all this is done, Kardama Muni almost immediately is now ready to leave. So many points come to my mind, and the first thing that stood out for me from these two verses are that, Bhagavatam talks about many exalted topics, knowledge, detachment. Some of these words stand out, right? But time and again, there's another thing that stands out is that all of these personalities exhibit their feelings, their in another word, what they call as the affect system, like AFFECT, affect system. So they all exhibit their feelings, their emotions. And in the section where Queen Kunti is offering prayers, Srila Prabhupada writes in 1842, the famous verse of Tvai Menanya Vishaya. So in that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all the attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affection does not mean complete negation of the finer elements like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living entity, whoever he may be, must have his feeling of affection for others because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feeling of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord in place of desire for sense gratification. So, time and time again, we see this. Krishna consciousness is not about negation. Krishna consciousness is about finding the real center of keeping Krishna as the center of our lives. So that was the first point that stood out for me in both of these verses. And then the other thing, the second point that stood out for me was, here is Kardama Muni. He has everything, if we were to look at from our perspective, of what success could mean, or in a, uh, he was powerful. He was not just spiritually powerful, he was materially powerful. He had so much yogic powers. Just like that, he created the material mansion. Her emaciated body then became her, she received her princess-like body. So he was supremely powerful, right? There was nothing he did not have. He had a beautiful home. He had the Gandharva girls was there. He could enjoy to no extent. It almost seemed like there was no end to his enjoyment. He had a beautiful wife. He had many children. Seems like he led a successful life, right? Um, and I can say this from my experience, the day I had my first child, it that attachment out of nowhere, it just so grew so strong. Any one of us who has a child, we know how strong that attachment is from day one, and it only grows stronger and stronger. So because there is this conception of I, and anything that extends from me is mine, like asat grahat, that Prahlad Maharaj says in when he speaks to his father. um, he says, Tat sadhu manye suravarya dehinam. So, dehinam, people who have accepted the body, sada samudvigna dhyam asadgrahat. So, asadgrahat, so people who have accepted the body, the dehinam, what happens is this asadgrahat. Because of having accepted this temporary body, or the bodily relations, the thinking of this I, and that everything that belongs is mine. So that it's it is the central concept of material life. I and mine is a central concept. And what happens to those people? Samudvigna, they're filled with, this udvigna. We hear it in Bhagavad Gita too. The udvigna is the full of anxieties. And what happened? Their intelligence is stolen. And basically, Prahlad Maharaj says, Griham Andhakupam, they enter this well, dark well. They fall into this deep, dark well. Um, So that is for materially afflicted people, right? Like people whose vision is covered with this I and mine. That is the only conception they have. But Kardama Muni is not there, right? He's not attached, because we see from the verses prior to all of these verses what was his consciousness. Um, so then one might ask, okay, why? Okay, he's not attached to his children and wife and home. But why would he take sannyas? Why would he leave everything? And so for this, I would like to quote a verse from 10:60:38. So this is Rukmini um, speaking to Krishna. There is this, Krishna has this, he wanted to joke with Rukmini, and so he's telling her, why would you get married to me? You could have married Shishupal. I'm not even a king. I'm just a prince. I'm actually a cowherd. You know what I did before. He says, he jokes with her. So she faints, and then when she gets up, she offers these. These are the following verses. One of the verses is this. She says that you are the embodiment of human goals, and you yourself are the final aim of life. Desiring to attain you, O powerful Lord, intelligent persons abandon everything. So if the question comes up, if Kardama has everything and if he's not attached, why can't he just live his life like a grahastha, right? Like he's not a grahamedi. Like, there is this verse, apashyatam atva tattvam griheshu grahamedinam. So there Prabhupada talks about who are grahamedis. Grahamedis, they live just for the benefit of their family members, either themselves or extended. And Medi means jealous. So Prabhupada goes in the purport, he talks about Graha Medis. The question is, why did Kardama leave? He could have, he was a Grahastha, he was living a life that was centered around Krishna, because that was a question I had. Why did he do that? And Rukmini Devi says, Intelligent persons abandon everything else. It is they who are worthy of your association, and not men and women absorbed in pleasure and grief resulting from their mutual lust. So his life was centered around Krishna. And so there is this, he was detached. Right from the start, he was detached. And then, um, so we see these two things. I thought I'll title it as detached caring because he cared for his wife. He gave what she wanted. And we see, personalities like Kardama Muni and Devahuti are not ordinary personalities. They are there for a reason. And in fact, Kardama Muni is a progenitor, a son of Brahma. He has a service to do. He is a Prajapati, right? So what he did was an act of service. So in that sense, he is not an ordinary person. And even even though they may have affection, even though they may have feelings, there is also the sense of detachment. So in Canto 11, chapter 20, text 8, there is this verse, Yadrichaya matkathadau jata shraddhastu yah puman na nirvinno nati shakto bhakti yogosya siddhida. So if in this there is a verse, in that text, in that verse there is a phrase, na nirvinno na ati shakto. So nirvinna means disgusted, and ati means too much. Asakti, ati shaktaha means very attached. So such people, they are not disgusted with the material life, and they're not too attached to it either. So they are, like this idea that we hear in the same idea is presented in 244 Bhagavad Gita, right? Neither too much attached or not too detached. So where was that? Anyway, I know you get I'm blanking out on the text at the moment, but uh, neither too attached nor detached. And so that that is the takeaway for me from these verses, from Kardama Muni's, um, his he was attached to the Supreme Lord. He had affection for his wife. And so when you put those two things together, what seems to come out is this detached caring. And one final thing that I wanted to point out was Devahuti herself is not an ordinary person. So if we go further, so this we are currently in 23rd chapter, but we go 10 chapters ahead in 333:21, there is a verse where um, you know, Kapila Dev is also now, he's spoken to his mother, now he's also leaving. And so in that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that a woman whose husband is away from home or has taken to the renounced order should not be very sorry, because she still has the presence of her husband's representative, her son. It is said in the Vedic scriptures, Atmaiva Putro Jayate. The husband's body is represented by the son. Strictly speaking, a woman is never widowed if she has a grown son. Now comes these few lines. Devahuti was not very much affected while Kapila Muni was there, but upon his departure she was very afflicted. She grieved not because of her worldly relationship with Kardama Muni, but because of her sincere love for the personality of Godhead. The example given here is that Devahuti became just like a cow who had lost her calf. A cow bereft of her calf cries day and night. Further on in the purport, this intense affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although manifested as affection for one's son, is spiritually beneficial. So, anyway, so the point is that Devahuti, we can see that she was not an ordinary personality. When when she expresses her feelings of, whatever, like scratching the toe, putting her head down and expressing, like wondering if he's going to leave her away, all of those things are not coming from, we can't think those are experiences similar to ours. So to summarize, I think I went all over the place, but I'll come back and tie it all together. The first thing I said was these exalted personalities may express their emotions. And Prabhupada writes in those purports in the prayers to Queen prayers of Queen Kunti, he says that you know to have those emotions and desires is it doesn't mean that pure personalities don't have emotions and feelings and desires. They have it, but it is just Krishna is at the center. So that was one thing. Then we saw how Kardama Muni had everything, but he gave it all away, and he walked away not out of disgust. It was not out of because it was because he was attached to the Supreme Lord, right? And finally, this point about detached caring is that one may care for somebody, and when Krishna is at the center, it can look a certain way. For example, like my son is right here. We care for our children, that the affection is there, and sometimes it may seem like detachment, because if um we may do things for their benefit, for their well-being, but ultimately, it's like how Prabhupada says, we all have to fly our own plane. Like, I have to do things that are good for me, right? Like my own spiritual well-being, I have to do that. And I may do things for them, but I have to place my relationship with Krishna also at the forefront. And that is what Kardama Muni did here. And so I'll pause there. My apologies if it seemed like my thoughts weren't together, but this is what I could bring to the table today. Um, if you have any corrections, thoughts, questions, please.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much. So I was thinking, I think the last one that you mentioned about we have to fly our own plane, like Prabhupada said. So in this case, Kardamon is living the family life. Is it, of course, at the end, not now, at the end, even Kapila Dev is there, still he lives, right? So, I was just thinking about this. See, he was not doing, I know he was enjoying, but in the sense that if his Krishna is in the center, so is that not helping the individual, right, to going, of course it is helping the individual going towards the Krishna, right?
Right.
So at the end, I think the speed, what do you call, that accelerator has to be pressed. I think that's how it is, I was understanding, right? So but of course, throughout his life, Kardamamuni or anyone, you gave your own example, right? Taking care of children,
Yeah.
but still that itself is, if you're doing in a mood of service, right, still it is a devotional service. It is helping us to make progress in devotional service. Is that but at the end you are saying, I think the example of Kardamuni, if I take, there has to be accelerator has to be pressed, right?
That's how
Is
I
that
was thinking, Prabhu, because frankly, if I, when I was looking some of these lectures online, if they're given by either a brahmachari or a sannyasi, for me, I couldn't relate to those points, because for me at this point in time, I have two young children, I have a household to run. So how do I make sense of these verses, right? Like yeah, they have this, they have these nine daughters, and there he goes, he walks away. How do I make sense of it? So for me, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And finally, the for me, I made peace with the fact that, like for example, this concept of varnashrama, right? Like, after there is a stage of vanaprastha. So it almost seems like, uh, you know, in within that structure, yes, there is time for taking care of children, household, and everything. But then after that, there has to come a time where we have to take care of our own spiritual life. Is it tummy hurting? No, I'm coming. So that's how I'm understanding that there has to come a time where, where we really focus on our own spiritual growth and our own relationship with Krishna. So that's how I took it. So I don't know if I answered because Govinda was right here.
No, no, I got it, Mataji. Yeah. It's like a comment and question. So I was thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think I have to go. He's not doing well, so I'm going to excuse myself. Sorry, my apologies. I have to go right now. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील